Sometimes I pinch myself when I realize that I have the privilege of traveling to Israel as part of my job. My first visit was in 2007 to a conference that also included some day trips. My second and third trips were also mostly indoor educational experiences, and it wasn't until 2013 that I participated in our full Israel tour. What I thought I would experience was just the historical biblical sites, and yes, that is thrilling and plentiful. I remember staring out of the window from my Jerusalem hotel room, overlooking the shepherd's fields in Bethlehem every night in awe that I was seeing the very place I sang about every Christmas for as long as I can remember. What I didn't expect was to see the absolute marvel that Israel is today. And it was our tour guide that brought this to light. I'm often saddened when I hear people exclaim that going on a tour to Israel is too touristy for them. They want to drive around and explore completely on their own. That's fine, but I can only think of how much they would drive by having no way of knowing the rich history or present agricultural or scientific marvel that exists everywhere without a knowledgeable guide to uncover these fascinating facts. In 2015, I had the privilege of leading my first women's tour, followed by a second in 2017, and last, co-leading with my husband on our regular Israel tour in 2020. Seeing and experiencing Israel yourself is an immense privilege. Taking others there is even a greater joy. I remarked to a friend who is a store owner in the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem that one of my great joys is seeing people, the faces of these people as they walk through the Jaffa Gate into the old city for the first time. He said, "You know what they feel? Life. Some of my own people don't even get that." Then he added, to my great surprise, "You're doing your job. You are making us jealous," referencing Romans 11. I have also witnessed that what can make or break a tour experience is the tour guide. An Israeli tour guide is educated with the equivalent of at least a master's degree. I often marvel that they have average-sized heads, considering the incredible knowledge and accumulation of facts these heads contain. And not just history or modern points of interest, but flora and fauna, and an exhaustive knowledge of the Bible, both Hebrew and Christian scriptures. Rachela Dotan was the tour guide for our most recent tour in 2020. She came highly recommended, and we soon understood why. Not only do tour guides provide facts and commentary, but they become virtually a parent to the tour group, looking after our needs, sizing up the group, modifying plans based on the group's personality, and looking out for us in so many ways. I know we are on her heart day and night. And she wanted to ensure that we had the best possible experience. And for so many people, this is the trip of a lifetime. The Proverbs 31 verse I have ascribed to Rachela is verse 27. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Rachela, it is such a delight to have you in my zone here in Winnipeg, even though I know you're coming from Haifa in northern Israel. Beautiful place on the water, on the Mediterranean. And, you know, it's obvious to me, having been on the tour with you, why I chose this verse from Proverbs for you. Tell us how you see your tour groups as one who is looking after us.
Well, I'm very excited, let me tell you, because I feel that I give my heart and soul, and I prepare myself not just to know everything I need to know, but also to get the people happy, get to know them, get to know their needs. And, I just got my reward recently because people were complaining about Thomas Cook, which has been in the business for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cynical, and I wrote, well, no complaints about the Holy Land because nobody is coming. So one of my Canadian tourists wrote to me, nobody complains about the Holy Land because you make it perfect.
Aww.
And that brought such a delight because this is why I'm doing that. And that can give me my heart full of joy to start in the morning and do everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never bored to do everything all over again because it's different people, it's different challenges. And I really make it work.
Yes, I'm sure it must just break your heart not to be able to, but we're certainly hoping and praying that that things will change very soon. And maybe by the time this actually airs, tours will be open and you can come and Rachela can be your guide. But Rachela, you're a Sabra. You're a Sabra, right? That's a native Israeli, and that means cactus, which is prickly on the outside and soft in the inside. You are really a woman of the book because you grew up in the land of the book. So tell us a bit about your heritage.
Well, my mother is third generation here, so that makes my grandchildren eighth generation.
Wow.
And that means that I grew up learning the Bible, the Old Testament, I must say, as part of my education. And my mother used to quote verses from the Bible. And I know the places, and I'm connected to where I go. And this is basically my heritage, my history. And I feel that people that landed here and never knew Israel, they feel that this is their home because Jesus was here and because he was walking in the places that we are walking. And I am very attached to it in a very unique way because I learned that a lot of what Jesus speaks about still grows here. The land is still the same, the seasons, the colors, and even our Hebrew is impacted by verses that he said. So obviously, this is something that I discovered only 25 years ago when I became a tour guide.
I think many of our tour participants are amazed at how much your knowledge and many tour guides' knowledge of the Christian scriptures as well as the Hebrew scriptures. It's really just incredibly intense and very, very impressive. Let's put it like that. I know that you lived in Ecuador with your family for 2 years, so you know a bit about what it's like to be an outsider. What took you to Ecuador, and what was that experience like?
Well, it was 40 years ago that Israel was building a missiles boat for the Ecuadorians. You know that we import a lot of goods, but we also have a lot of income because not just because of tourism, but because of high tech and military defense. And that was the reason that we were living there. And that was the first time that my children were not getting the Jewish education through the school. And I had to explain to my daughter that Christmas is not our holiday, we celebrate Hanukkah. And she said, well, you know, Santa Claus forgot I was Jewish. He brought me a present too, because in the school they gave her a present like anybody else. And that's when I understood that Jews that live across the ocean need to do a lot more to educate their children, to go to synagogue, and to make Friday and Saturday a different day of the week. With here, it's all over. As driver will tell you Shabbat Shalom, the special Jewish bread challah with braided you know, parts will be all over, even in the Muslim part of Jerusalem. And it's in the air. It's in the air.
Yes. So you know what it's like to be an outsider, and you can relate to many of the immigrants that are coming, the Jewish immigrants coming to Israel from Ethiopia and India, the B'nai Menashe, the sons of Manasseh, and and of course even Canada and the United States and France, and much of that reason for the increase in Aliyah is because of the uptick in anti-Semitism, which is really quite astounding and very alarming. And Jews are recognizing that it's actually the safest place in the world to be a Jew is in the land of Israel, in spite of your neighborhood. And but you can understand what it's like to come into a land where you don't know the language, or you know, it's unfamiliar. And your compassion, I'm sure, has been a blessing to many of the new immigrants.
My own father is an immigrant. So
Right.
he came from Vienna, Austria, running away from the Nazis.
Okay.
So I knew his difficulties to learn Hebrew, and I had to write his Hebrew letters. And he read only English until he could no longer read. And that was the way he coped. Hebrew is a difficult language.
Well, and I found one of my first visits to Israel, I realized that they had to come up with one language, because here is a nation where people were coming from all over the world, and it was like, what are we going to speak? And they finally went, well, why not Hebrew? And yet it wasn't that long ago when none of these people were speaking Hebrew regularly, except in synagogue, and suddenly everybody, that is the national language. And I keep trying to learn it, and you know, I'm getting there a little bit, but it is not an easy language, but it's quite remarkable. That's a miracle. Some people say there's never been an ancient language that's been resurrected and is now the common language. But what does it mean to you, Rachela, to take people from all over the world to see the land of Israel and all of its biblical significance and its present day significance? How does that impact you?
First of all, I have to say that I never knew how much I love this country until I started this profession. And I always try to learn more about the country that people are coming from, and that this is how I can compare things. And when I went to Canada, for example, about a decade ago, that's how I could say that you live in Winnipeg. It's a good thing. The Lake of Winnipeg is more or less like the size of Israel.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
people understand how small.
Yeah.
And by the way, Arabic is also another language, and all our signs are in English because it's so international, and Arabic and Hebrew.
Yes.
But as you mentioned before, we had to revive the language because based on the Bible, we don't have words for ice cream or train or airplane because these are not mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
So it was Yehuda who revived the Hebrew language.
That's right.
And and then we had a war of the languages, by the way, because just before World War I, they wanted to build the first university in Haifa, by the way, the Technion, which is like the MIT in the States. And there was a discussion of whether to teach everything in German, because it had enough words, or teach everything in French because the donors were coming from France. But guess what? They ended up teaching everything in Hebrew, and the first engineers graduated in Hebrew.
Wow. And I'm so glad that you brought up the fact that Israel obviously has 25% of the population at least that's Muslim Arabs and Christian Arabs and Druze, but that it is a dual language. It is a Arabic and Hebrew and English are on all the signs, and that you know, it's remarkable how when new immigrants, because Bridges for Peace helps new immigrants because they have to learn Hebrew in order to get a job. And so for that first year, we're providing them with the people who demonstrate need, obviously, who have income levels that require this. We're helping them to be able to make it through that first year so they can learn Hebrew and therefore get a job. But that's a requirement, and that's a pretty big step if you're an American or a Canadian wanting to go and live as a Jew in Israel, to say, oh, I have to learn this completely different language. Correct me if I'm wrong, that Israel is a very family-oriented country where parenthood and families are really honored. I remember going to one of my first theater experiences in Israel, and in Canada, you know, you're dressed nicely. You would never think of taking young children, but everybody at this very fancy theater had babies and snugglies, and moms were bouncing babies in the back. And there's just a sense that families and mothers with children, that's just part of society. We don't sort of separate ourselves as much.
Well, recently the high-tech companies started a new rule that meetings should not be any later than 3 in the afternoon, so they could go out and take their children. And they realized that family life is also important.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are away from home, it doesn't do very well for your will to invest and to work.
Right.
But we actually understand that soldiers that are coming to serve here and their families, either former Israelis or Americans or Canadians, we make sure that they'll have a family to go to on Friday, so they won't be by themselves. So we have a lot of what we call lone soldiers,
right.
But we make sure that they have a hot meal and a family that hugs them and waits for them. And we opened our hearts and homes for them.
Yes, and Bridges for Peace supports lone soldiers because, as you say, in Israel, it's just not allowed that somebody should celebrate the Sabbath alone, without family. It's a time to be with families. Now, you have experienced, as a mother and grandmother, both, what it's like to have your precious children and grandchildren in danger. So tell us about some of your experiences of times where Israel was under threat with your children, and recently, I think, with your grandchildren.
Well, we had the war with Gaza, whatever you call it, the guardian of the walls. And I have 5 grandchildren from the age of 5 and on. And they saw on TV the sirens and everything else, because thank God Haifa was mostly out of this danger. Only one day we had a siren in the peripheries of Haifa. And, you know, I'm talking to you from a safe room in my home. You can't see, but I'm sitting next to a metal door and a metal window, and the walls are very thick. And I'm the only one that has that facilities. So my grandchildren said, well, we'll stay at your place when it's wartime, because you have a bed there and we can sleep there and we shall be safe. because other people, they have to go down to the shelter or leave their home and go to the shelter in the neighborhood. And this is really something that we started having ever since the Gulf War, because we realized that people will be safer if they only have 15 seconds to go and be protected. My oldest grandson, who is now 15, was 3 months old when the Second War with Lebanon took place. And I remember looking at him in diapers in the bomb shelters. And my daughter said to me, I don't know what to do first. When the siren goes on and Haifa was targeted, we had about thousands of rockets launched towards Haifa. And I don't know whether to take the baby, to take the diaper, to take the formula. So I came to be with her, and I looked at him and I said, it can't happen. I mean, we have to do what it takes that we'll have a safe place. And, you know, shalom is not just a hi or goodbye. It also means, and we really hope for it and pray for it.
And even as a parent, you had your own gas masks during that first Gulf War when your children were young. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, I remember. I didn't have an apartment with a safe room because that was not even an option then.
Right.
And I remember the siren went on. We had tapes over the window, and I had a wet rag to put at the door, so if there'll be chemical attack, it won't affect us. And I had to help them with the gas masks. And then I put one on myself. And then we watched TV, and we were waiting for the alarm that will allow us to go out. At that time, we had a guy called Nachman Shai, who was the speaker of the IDF. Now he was appointed to be the minister of the diaspora, being responsible for the contact of Israel and the Jews abroad. And he was really reassuring us, go drink water and breathe. And we needed that. We needed that. This is part of what we're going through here.
Right. I recently, in this recent conflict with Gaza, and as we know, attempts for peace, the Land for Peace in Gaza has meant something like 16,000 rockets fired into Israel when Israel took all of the Jewish people out. Why do families stay when there are, for instance, from Lebanon alone, 100,000 missiles pointed at Israel? I know the value of finally, after 2,000 years, having a Jewish homeland, even if it fits into our Lake Winnipeg in Manitoba. If there had been a Jewish homeland, there would have not been a Holocaust. How would you respond to why don't families just get out of there and tell us what you think?
Well, you bring me back to the minute that I take a group out of the Children's Memorial in the Holocaust Museum, which is a site basically in Israel. And I always say, if God put me here, this is my place. What do you want us to do? The last one will close down the light and throw the key to the ocean. We have to be here. We have to keep this place safe for the Jews around the world. And they know that whatever happens, they have a home to go to.
Wow.
And you know, I lived abroad, but I was homesick. And then my mother-in-law kept saying to me, I see you behind the gates of your doors, and all you wanted to do is pack your bag and go to Israel.
Wow.
Sarah, I'm getting emotional.
No, I know. I get that way too, because I hope our viewers understand the significance of having a homeland. And Rachela, I want to switch back to just the tourism part. What do you have a favorite site in Israel or a couple? And if you do, tell us why.
I believe that my favorite site is Masada, because that tells a story about how Jews decided that if they cannot go on with their Jewish heritage, they'll rather give their life and make sure that their children will not become slaves and the women will not be abused. Another place that I really love is Capernaum, which has Christian and Jewish history, and it tells us the life of people in the Galilee, which is a region of so many nations even today. And last but not least, Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the heart of Israel. It's a place where we all connect to. It's holy for every religion, every monotheistic religion. And we certainly feel that we're walking in Jesus' footsteps as we walk along.
I agree. Yeah.
So people always tell me, we were sure that you live in Jerusalem because the way you talk about it. No, I live in Haifa, but Jerusalem is a place that at least half of the tour is there.
Right.
And that really brings a lot of spirituality to people.
I think it surprises people too. I've found they're not expecting, and yet sometimes the bus goes under that tunnel, and when it comes out and there's the holy city right before them, I think people are surprised at what emotions come. And, God said, I will place my name there forever. And I think a lot of people realize it is the heartbeat. It is that. Rachela, I just know that this love that you have for the land of your ancestry, the land that you grew up in, does spill over to the care that you take for every person on your tour to have the best experience that they can have. And you definitely work day and night. I know you're up thinking about it. You're taking the temperature of how the tour is feeling, how they're doing, what we might adjust. And you are just a wonderful example of somebody who isn't doing this as just your job. You're doing it because you really love this land so much that you want people to just come away knowing that it was the trip of a lifetime. Do you have a favorite verse from the Bible?
Well, I like very much Psalms 122. I think it's 122, yeah. And that's the one I always read as soon as we leave the airport. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Wow, I used to recite it by heart.
May they prosper.
I haven't done it for 50 months.
May they prosper
and may
who
those
love
who
you.
Right. You see? Well, I keep saying to myself, the first tour I ever take again will be like I'm a new tour guide because I haven't done it for such a long time. So I do encourage everybody to come for my first tour.
Oh, I do too. We can't encourage you enough. Come and let Rachela lead you. And there are other wonderful tour guides as well, but we were just privileged to have you on our last tour, and we hope to have you on our tours in the future. Thank you so much, Rachela, for sharing some of your story, your love for Israel, your heart to see the nation prosper. We know it's our future home too. It's not just about the past, it's about the present. And for people of the book, it's our home in the future as well. So thank you for all you do to highlight this special place of the book, as a woman of the book. So shalom, Rachela. We see you soon.
Shalom.
Thank you for watching this episode of Women of the Book. To find out more about our guest or the ministry of Bridges for Peace, please follow these links or visit our website at bridgesforpeace.com.